So I have to say that when one kind of chilly day of July in Durham, Francis told me that there will be a panel on today's session about the centenary of 1924 revolution, and he asked me to join. I was jumping on my chair. I was so excited that I even bought the wrong ticket to come to London, as I believe the conference was yesterday, so that I would be able to attend in person, because in a few hours I will embark on a plane. So what made me so eager to join is connected to the sense of frustration caused by the lack of celebration of this event in Sudan, because of course, the ongoing war. As all of you, as war unfolded, I have been first shocked and then grieved and then bereaved by the war with its lore of death and destruction of people and places I loved. But also what made me very angry was to think that this war has once again deprived the 1924 revolution of what was due to her, a proper celebration for its centenary. The war had robbed the possibility of remembering it together in the same way as the previous other authoritarian regime, in particular the Islamist, had sidelined its memory because it was ideologically incompatible with them. So I think it is very important that today a commemoration take place here, even if this will never replace what it should have happened in Sudan. But still, I take it as a sign of resilience and resistance of some of its core ideas as seeds that have been spread in Sudanese history. So writing the history of 1924 has kept me busy for many years, for more than a decade. This long journey was also caused by the gap between the over-generous archives in London and in Khartoum and the previous historiography, as Alice has mentioned before. With the, of course, important the exception of the works of Yoshiko Kurita, who actually put me on the right track. Because the 1924 revolution has mostly been described through a series of negativities, what is not. So it was not a purely Sudanese event because Egyptians were behind it. This is how it has been for long described. It was not a people revolution because it was organized by a small elite, by a politically immature proto-nationalist elite. And it was not a moment of unity as the nationalist group was described as being divided between one faction made by Northerners, sons of notables on the one hand, and Black Sudanese on the other, again, between inverted quote. It was not a real revolution. At best, it was a uprising or a revolt. So it took me a really long time to trust myself and even more my sources. And at that stage, it was very crucial to spend quite a long time discussing with people whose family had been involved in the revolution, like the family of Ali here, or the family of Salih Abdelkadir, or Zainab bin Abdel Tam, and others. And in addition, I was lucky to go through dozens of interviews that were being published in 1974 in this incredible collection, الروايات الشفوية لثوار 24. So he was lucky enough to be able to combine those qualitative sources with quantitative one, which I obtained through constructing a kind of a database, which included all the people that were registered by the British for their activities in the nationalist movement. So every time I would find a name, I would add it to the database with some key information like the age, the profession, the origin, the area of action, and the description that I would find in the colonial report. And this database included about 1,000 people, all in all. Notice that I consistently talk about men because women are not visible in colonial archives. So at the end of this research, I discovered quite many things about 1924, even if I'm sure that many more are still to be discovered. In particular, I think about the cultural dimension of the 1924 revolution. So For today, I have tried to select what I consider being the highlight of 1924, what made it an event so important in Sudanese history, and also one that was important for authoritarian government to silence or to erase. Indeed, the memory of 1924 is a precious reservoir of symbols of hope, resilience, collective struggle, and solidarity, to be used in the moment like the one we are living, a part of the revolutionary tradition of Sudan. So there are three main points I would like to raise. The first concerns the spread of the movement. The second, the question of race and racialization of the 1924 revolution. And the third is the question of the nationalist ideology. We will be very short because Ali has already talked about that. So as to its spread, if you look at this map about the diffusion of political unrest in Sudan, you will see anti-colonial organization taking place, or event taking place from El Fashir to Malakal, from Wau to Dillinj, from Shendi to Sinnar, beside, of course, the capital, Port Sudan, El Obeid, Atbara, Wad Menani, but also smaller centers like Hassaissa, Umruaba, Talodi. Of course, there were important regional variation in the composition of the movement in each of those sides. For example, in Port Sudan, we know that Hadendowa Dockers were really on the forefront of the events. In El Obeid, instead, it was a trading community. And in Atbara, of course, the workers of the railways, and so on. But the point is, of course, that showed it is that the spread was not only geographical, but it was, first of all, social. Another obvious element that jumps to the eyes studying the database of activists is the diversity of the profession of the people who joined the movement and the importance of the grassroots, that is, ordinary men, notably occasional workers employed by the colonial state, artisans, shopkeepers, market people. And this reminds us a short quote told by Al-Azza, the wife of Ali Abdel Latif, kept in a riwayat. There she say, during one of the demonstrations that took place in August 1924, she relates that me and my mother, we wanted to go and see what was happening. So we went to the market, and what I saw was something completely new, because the butcher was shouting and the greengrocer was shouting. We followed them until they reached the headquarters of the district commissioner. They were used to pour hot water on the demonstrator through pipes. People started to run, and I was asking, what is going on? What is happening there? One of them, his name was Babike, said to me, what do you want to understand? The revolution is coming outside your house, and you still want to understand. The reason why the grassroots participation is connected both to the reason why the grassroots participated, of course, is connected to both local and global causes, and Ali has already touched upon them. What I call the spring of the colonized nation that took place after the First World War, of course, and the principle of self-determination. Even if this was not put in practice by any of the dominant nation, it was taken very seriously by the various nationalist movements in the colonial world from Asia to Africa. And among them, of course, Egypt, of course, the 1919 revolution in Egypt was seen at the time as one of the greatest victories obtained by a colonial nation. The second point I want to raise concerns what I call the racialization of the 1924 revolution, and is related to the heterogeneity of the background of the people who joined the national movement. So the database unquestionably show a great racial and ethnic diversity, and this fact is echoed everywhere. From this most famous picture that Ali already mentioned of the founders of the White Flag League, that show 4 people of entire different origins sitting together, to all the list of members I could find in archives or in private hands. So The puzzle and the mystery is then the following. If we have so many traces of this racial and ethnic heterogeneity, how it comes that 1924 came to be associated to what the British called the detribalized black, people whose origins were from southern, western, eastern peripheries and from old slave reservoir. In fact, there is a very important element that is shown by the analysis of the list of the participants of 1924 that will help us to understand this mystery. We are a point of history in the 1920s, in which people defined as black could climb the hierarchy of civil service and the army, so that a real upward social mobility was then open for them in the first 20 years of colonial rules. So you see people like Ali Abdel Latif, Zeynep Adetan get in position like Mamour or Submamour. In other words, at this point of the history of Sudan, the background of a person did not stop his educational or career possibility. There were, of course, limitations because the British, in colonial institutions, applied a clear racial division of labor. Yet, students, irrespective to their origins, mix in colonial school. This is where, for example, Ali Abdel Latif and Obaid al-Jalamin met. They met at school, in the colonial school. And they continue to share many things as employees of the colonial state. But after 1924, a new administration, and especially the civil secretary, Harold McMichael, made bear the burden of the responsibility of the events of 1924 only to people that were defined as Black Sudanese, using them as scapegoats and pointing at their participation to justify the need for actuating a much heavier and all-swiping racial policy that started inside the school and continued with the closed district ordinance. 1924 is therefore a moment in which the grassroots and the elite, independently of their ethnic, racial, or professional background, could work together for the liberation of Sudan. The last element, and I will conclude, which I want to bring to your attention, is the nationalist ideology of 1924. As expressed in the petition that Ali already discussed, in forms of telegrams that were sent to the Egyptian and the British government and to the press. The telegrams insisted on self-determination, the right of Sudanese to decide for their own destiny, but also on brotherhood, unity, mutual support, the overcoming of division related to religions and origins as essential principle necessary to fight against colonization. What is also was a mystery, was striking to me, is that many were written in protest against the arrest of League members or of some activists, but they were signed by their true names, which made it very easy for the British to identify the signatories, leading to more arrestation and more imprisonment. So I ended up finally understanding that those imprisonments were an explicit strategy that was pursued by the League, because imprisonment were meant to express that activists were ready to go to the extreme consequences for the sake of all Sudanese. For example, we know also that the oath that the League, the oath of the League that the members were the people that wanted to join the League had to take, was taken only by people ready to go to what they call the extreme sacrifice, that was imprisonment. And this had the objective of sparkling more protests, igniting more protests. And this actually worked very well, because the chronology of 1924 shows that is after the imprisonment, the arrest of most of the main members of the League, that the most important events of 1924 take place. The events in Port Sudan, in Atbara, in Omdurman, the Cadets Mutiny, until the final mutiny of November. So I shall end this presentation just by one telegram, which I don't think I have the time to quote both, that for me incarnate perfectly what I just said. That is the following. We bet. So just to remember, I found only translation in English of those telegrams. The original Arabic one I couldn't be found. So these translations are very draft, and the English is not perfect, but I think you can get the meaning anyway. We beg to conveyance of this our protest to both the Egyptian and British Parliament. Our dignity will not permit us to be bought and sold like animals who have no voice in their disposal. We protest with all our strength for not giving our people the legal freedom to say their war openly and to send those who will be selected by the nation from her sincere son to at least be aware of the true decision on the settlement of the future during the negotiation. It is not for any other person than they, whatever the state may be, to settle the question of its future, because the word is only for the nation and she is the owner of the right. We protest against the secrecy and compulsory work which are adopted for the separation of the Sudan. And perhaps I will leave the screen on the very last one, which is another telegram of protest in which they say, what you are doing to us will not discourage us. We keep protesting. We will keep fighting. Thank you very much for your attention.